Hello, my metal loving friends out there. Today we're going to do a deep dive into how you get that really cool patterning in sanmai steel. We're starting with 3 different layers of steel. We have a 1084 core and 2 15 and 20 outer claddings. I like to go ahead and weld up the entire seam all the way around to keep an airtight package and do this without flux. We're starting with 10 inches of steel here. This is my submission to the YouTube Creator Build-Off Challenge. There's 10 of us YouTube creators who are all building our own versions of the Gyuto chef knife. I'll go ahead and link to all the other creators in the description of the video, and more importantly, you'll find a link to go and vote. It's up to you to decide the winner of the challenge. So I went ahead and started with the super hot forge. I get my metal all the way to forge welding temperature. I bring it out and I do light taps over the entire billet to set the welds. I do this cycle twice to ensure that the welds are set before I move on. For the next portion of the build, I use a diagonal cross peen hammer. I find that this works a little easier on the wrist than a traditional cross peen hammer. This is what is actually creating the cool pattern in the sanmai. By using this diagonal peen hammer, I'm forcing valleys and peaks in the steel. Later on, you'll see that I go ahead and planish it flat again, but ultimately, when I cut a knife out of it, that is what's going to create that cool undulation in the design pattern that you see in the sanmai. After you've added lots of figure to the steel, you just grab your normal hammer and you planish the entire billet flat again. Try to get all those valleys and peaks as flat as you can. It's going to make cutting a knife out of this blank much easier in the end. After you've got it all hammered out, put it in a tub of vermiculite so it will anneal the steel and make it easier for the next portion of the build. Now the steel is fully annealed. 24 hours later, we can pull it out, cut the handle off, and then we'll move on to the next portion where we cut a knife out of it. Make sure your design fits well within your piece of steel. You want to be able to grind off the entire outer perimeter of welding because you don't want that to be in your edge. So I've decided that this bad boy needs a fuller. Now some would call this an S-grind, but I'm just going to do a fuller. I'm going to do a big fat fuller right here, and I think what that's going to do is when you cut, the material will come up, and then where that fuller's ground in, the material won't have anything to stick to and it'll just fall off. That's kind of the idea behind an S-grind. So let's do it. This is a neat idea right here. We're going to go ahead and use a small wheel attachment and grind in a fuller on both sides and mill a slot. That'll allow no stiction for your food to stick to once it goes farther up the blade. Man, I'm moving right along. Did you see the smoke rise off that steel? It's still super hot as I mark my edge out here. These are my grind tool lines for my rough bevel grind. I like to just basically rough in my grinds before heat treat. I leave a little extra meat on my blades. That way if I get any slight warpage, I can fix it after the heat treatment. We're moving right on to the heat treat. Here's the preheating of the oil. And then we're going to try to get a really nice even heat over the full blade. So I use this tube inside my forge to create a heat chamber that's more even than just having a flame blowing on the large blade. I move the blade back and forth to try to get as even of a heat as possible. Well, the heat treatment went really well. Rings like a bell. I went ahead and ground in my fullers, milled my slot, got this weight out of here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grind these flats, get it all cleaned back up. I still have some hammer strikes in here, and I think I'm going to leave some of those. I plan on rounding over the spine, do my finish grind, and then we're going to go ahead and get a guard fit up and keep going. This is a fairly important process. I wanted to show you how I used the same small wheel that I used to grind the fuller to sand the fuller. It certainly makes this process go a lot easier. I probably get more questions about this process than anything else. This is where I do my coffee etch. I use lukewarm tap water here, and then I just dump in the cheapest instant coffee that I have. Now, I did make sure that my blade was clean and free of any debris or oils. I cleaned it with acetone, and then I just mix this up and set it in there and let it sit for 24 hours, and you'll see the outcome here in 1 second. Just a note, I did not use ferric chloride at all. I used 100% strictly coffee for this. It offers a wonderful contrast between the two layers, and it's a nice durable finish once you buff it. Here's the handle stack with the guard material already all fit up. If you guys wish to see a more in-depth version of doing these handles, I've put out several videos of how to do these handles in a step-by-step breakdown format. Here I am. I'm going to go ahead and go through this very quickly. I've put some grind lines on here, and you'll see me grind off the facets to create an angular design type handle. I like these angular design type handles for kitchen knives because they index really well in your hand and you know exactly where the knife is when you're holding it. I do think when you do these angular designs, it's really important that you hand sand with a hard backer so you can keep your lines nice and crisp. We have black Gaboon ebony and a dyed and stabilized maple. Absolutely gorgeous. Tung oil goes a long way for a handle like this. Well, that's awesome. It worked out great. Let me bring you guys in and show you some up close pictures of this bad boy. Well, I was extremely happy with how this turned out. You could see how the pattern moves up and down by using that diagonal cross peen that I showed you guys earlier. This is a great way to do a very simple san mai. And what's really cool is in this fuller area, you can see where that san mai breaks between the layers in there also. And it gives you kind of a really cool glimmery pattern when you turn the knife in your hand. Here's the angular design of the handle that I was talking about. I'm going to show you the butt of the knife here in just a second so that you can see exactly the shape of the handle and how it indexes in your hand. It fits really nice. There's that dyed and stabilized orange maple burl. Turned out absolutely gorgeous. There's the shape of the handle right there. This knife fits great in your hand. Overall, I'm 100% pleased with the build. I think it came out absolutely wonderful. It fits great in the hand. The balance is perfect. I do want to reiterate, this is a challenge. There's 10 creators that are all battling to be #1 on YouTube right now, and this is my submission to the challenge, and the only way that I can win this challenge is if you go and vote for my knife. I understand if you like the other guy's knives better, but I expect you to vote for mine. Totally kidding, guys. Go and vote for whichever knife that you think is the best. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys on the next video. Cheers.